What is up? Back again for another great episode on the Too Tall Sports podcast. My guest today is Tone Stakes. He is the owner and president of GameUsedTone. It's an online platform for collectible sports memorabilia and jerseys and shoes directly from players themselves. So he works with their agents and players, and he sells a lot of good stuff. He used to work for Upper Deck and Panini America, the big sports cards trading companies. So really cool episode today. Great stories about Kobe and Tiger Woods, and he's met a lot of people in his career. So really cool to have Tone on today. You guys are really going to enjoy that. You can find all of this stuff at GameUsedTone, TONE.com, and you can find him on social media as well, GameUsedTone. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. You can follow the show on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. Please check out our YouTube channel if you'd like to subscribe there. That'd be awesome. And then hit the little bell so you can get notified every time we drop an episode, which is usually on Thursday mornings. And watch the interviews there. So we do video and audio. On the audio side, you can go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe there as well. Hit the 5-star all the way down below the episodes on the main page of Apple Podcasts. And if you want to leave a review, that'd be great as well. Trying to boost the show a little bit. You can also listen on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Google Play. We're on Pandora, iHeartRadio. Wherever you get your podcast, you can search Too Tall Sports Podcast, and we will be there. Send me a message. Let me know. I would love to hear your feedback about the episodes and what you think. So please enjoy my episode with Tone Stakes today, and I'll see you on the other side. Too Tall, Tall.
Going crazy.
All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest is the owner of GameUsedTone, which is an online platform for authentic game-worn collectibles, including jerseys and shoes directly from the players themselves. He's built a brand through the years of working with Upper Deck and Panini America in the sports collectibles industry. And it's an incredibly hot market lately these days, so I'm happy to have him on. He is Tone Stakes. What's going on, Tone? How you doing?
What's going on, Brett? I appreciate you having me on the Too Tall podcast, man. I'm excited to be here.
Me too, man. I'm definitely interested in this stuff, and I know all the players and guys you work with, so it's very exciting to talk to somebody that's on the inside of the industry. So it's pretty cool.
Do you have to be a certain size? Because I'm 6'3", but I feel like you're a lot taller than me, man. How tall are you?
6'7". I'm only 4 inches taller.
6'7".
Yeah.
We'd be a good 1-2 team on a basketball court.
Exactly, man. Pick and roll. I got you.
Sweet. No. Well, I'm excited to talk about it, man. Love to answer any questions about the experiences I have. And hopefully it's entertaining for the audience.
It definitely will be. No, I think this will be a good episode for us. I just, in general, before we get to your background, you've been in this industry for over 15 years, working with athletes and selling merchandise and memorabilia. How would you describe the last 15 years and maybe how it's changed and, what it's been like for you?
Yeah, man. Ever since I was a kid, I was a big fan of trading cards, right? And so to get into the trading card space about 15 years ago, it was amazing, right? Like to be part of Upper Deck, which was an iconic brand, is still an iconic brand, but was, at that time was the biggest trading card business out there, or trading card manufacturer out there. To go from there, seeing how they work there, and then working at Panini America, which is currently the biggest trading card manufacturer out there. It's just been a fun ride, man, the whole way through. It's been so many great stories, getting so many access to the NBA players, and then to build that out to having the type of business I have working directly with NBA players. It's just been a phenomenal path. So I've enjoyed it, man. I've had pretty good times all along the route.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty crazy. Real quick, why do you think that all of a sudden sports cards are popping again and memorabilia is like popping again? What, like the last 20 years, where has this been,
Yeah, honestly, so in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I'm 42, I'll be 42 this year. There was just a peak there where it was just unbelievable, and trading card manufacturers were jumping in, and everybody was making a lot of money at that time, and there was card shops everywhere. And then over the next, 15, 20 years or so, it kind of just slowly was deteriorating over time. And now the last 18 months or so, the trading card market is just unbelievable. The memorabilia and game use space that I'm in is carrying off that same wave, but the trading card space is it's to a point where nobody could have predicted this before, right? It's just
Yeah.
unbelievable. I think there's so many factors that went into it. I think you have obviously the Last Dance craze about Michael Jordan created excitement about the Jordan cards and basketball cards kind of in general. I think that leading into the stimulus stuff that was going on where people were getting a couple extra bucks and still working, and before COVID got really too in depth, I think the idea of the stock market at that time of people investing in that space, not getting the type of returns that they were hoping for, being fearful of their jobs. They were looking at other kind of quicker investment platforms. And I think trading cards, when it became kind of a quicker flip, there was options there. I also think that because of the influencers that got into the space to discuss it, you got guys like Gary Vaynerchuk. There now you're seeing a lot of NBA players. A guy that I'm, a big fan of, Kevin Durant, his partner Rich Kleiman. They've gotten into the space, and so when you start to get a lot of people who have a big platform to talk about, it creates awareness. Then I know we're going to talk about NBA Top Shot, but
Yeah.
when you start adding all of these elements together, it just started a serious fire amongst the trading card industry. And me personally, man, I'm a big fan of it because I think about all the collectors who have been in the industry for 25 some odd years and have collected cards and kind of been, friends and, oh, you're a card collector, like almost joked about it. Now they have a platform to say, well, I guess it was a good idea. I've
Yeah.
got the ability to make some good money if they choose to. Now there are definitely collectors who are not happy with the influx because they like to put sets together, and now every card is a lot pricier, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
for the most part, I think it's been a good boost. All the manufacturers are making significant dollars. It's hard to find product in Walmart or Target. It's about impossible.
Wow.
It's been an exciting run. I'm very glad for my friends at those companies and kind of the collecting community in general.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get back to all that in a little bit. Let's talk about your background. So you
Yeah,
grew up in
please.
Chicago, and you actually
Hmm.
made your way out to Southern California in the
Yeah.
high desert area, and you played high school basketball. So I just wanted to ask you, what kind of high school player were you?
I was a point guard who believed that passing the ball was your first choice.
That's
Uh,
good.
it didn't allow me a lot of college scholarship opportunities because my stat line was like 8 points and like 14 assists or something. I should have flipped that a little more. I probably should have focused on my shot a little more. But I like to think I was a player that all the other players enjoyed playing with because I got them a lot more shots.
There you go. That's good, man. I mean,
Yeah.
damn, if you're averaging 10 plus assists a game, that should get, I mean, somebody could give you a shot.
You would think. I mean, I guess
No, it wasn't.
I think at the end of the day, it was that it, I got to play a junior college basketball. It allowed me to go play ball up in Canada for a year, which was
Nice.
spectacular. So I got to play for a couple more years after high school, which was great.
Okay, very nice. And then you go to
Yeah.
college down in this area. And I
Mhm.
mean, did you even know what you thought your career was going to be after college, or even after you played that year in Canada? And how did you ultimately end up in radio and media?
Yeah, so I honestly thought I was gonna be. I saw marketing. I love the idea of advertisements. When people were coming up with a catchy slogan, I had all these advertisement ideas. I was gonna put for. I got some for Budweiser, so just give me a call whenever you're ready. But I did. I thought that was gonna be my space. And so trying to find and living in the high desert, trying to find an advertising company to work for. I mean, it wasn't the
Yeah.
right fit. So I ended up, a friend of mine worked in knew a lady in country radio, and got me. I'm sorry, a guy in country radio got me an introduction there. And I was just doing promotions, kind of setting up the van and giving away tickets and that type of stuff. And then we eventually moved down to San Diego, worked at a big country radio station down there in San Diego called KSON, and they were one of the biggest at the time, a still phenomenal radio station. And that led to kind of the career getting into Upper Deck.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. So what was it like working behind the scenes in radio that kind of drew you into that started your kind of building relationships process? So what
Yeah.
was that like while you were with the station? And I know you're doing promotional events and stuff like that. How did that kind of get you ready for the next step?
Yeah, no, I think the promotions got me to see the workings of how a radio station works, right? So like people think, oh, the music is kind of what runs the station, but no, it's really the sales team, right? Because you're trying to create an interesting format that people will come to listen to the advertisements, because the advertisements pay for the bills of the radio station.
Yeah.
So the sales team, seeing what their goals were, obviously to sell airtime, but you were trying to create giveaways, promotions that helped promote back to those companies that were spending dollars on advertising.
Right.
So I started to see kind of how it wasn't just about the radio station and the great music we played, right? It was more about how can we use that music to then kind of fill in the space between those advertisements, so that it makes sense for those people to spend money on the radio station. So I started to see the business side of those elements, and I realized that, okay, for us to continue to grow this, we had to build relationships with those businesses, because each of those businesses all have their own plan of what they're trying to achieve. Sometimes it made perfect sense. Sometimes it was crazy and I didn't understand it, but I still was trying to figure out, okay, if we have tickets to, Toby Keith coming to town, how can we give those away that help promote your business at, a Jersey Mike's or a Jimmy John's, whatever. I mean, whatever those ways are, how can we help to build that out? And it wasn't always just set up outside and have people come by. There was other ways to build that, but the relationship building was really key to adding, some depth to that business position.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make your way to Upper Deck, like you said. I mean, that's an interesting transition. Obviously you go from radio to a trading card company. So how did that all come about? And then what did you learn in that business while you were there as well?
Yeah, for sure. So there was a lady that came down to our show. She was a big country music fan. She ended up being kind of a top person over at Upper Deck. And so she came through many times. We started to build a relationship again, going to relationships. And she's like, oh, you work with a lot of the country artists. She said, we have a position available at our trading card company where we are working with athletes. Would you like to work with athletes? And I was like, man, I love country music, but I am a huge fan of sports.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm in all day long. And so sure enough, that led to the opportunity to go to join the Upper Deck team. At Upper Deck, I realized it's a monster company at the time. I think they had 1,000 employees, something like that. So it was the biggest company I had ever worked for. Even the radio station was 100 people maybe or so.
Right.
So you started to see how their thinking was so far down the line. The trading card process is 6 to 8 month window for, production cycle. So you couldn't just think of what are we doing tomorrow. You had to look at what's happening 8 months from now, all the time. You're constantly looking at that. So I think having that understanding to see how their business was built out globally, it wasn't just regionally like our radio station was. It was now a global company looking at larger partnerships. And then my job was to work with the athletes and the agencies to secure the signatures for the trading card products, which initially was, me just kind of, hey, here's our offer, type stuff, right? Over time, I got to build the relationships with the individuals that made those decisions. Not always as the agent, sometimes it's the marketing representative, sometimes it's directly with the player for retired players. And so building those relationships and seeing once again what they were trying to get out of it, right? The marketing people are trying to present their good opportunities for their clients, for the players. The agents are always looking for the best partnerships that work for their players because they want to secure other players down the road. So if I can bring Brett a deal for this signature deal, now it's going to help Brett's buddy who's thinking about joining our agency, right?
Sure.
So everybody has these kind of goals. And I mean, obviously that's common now. As an older man, I realize every human being has these kind of goals. But as a kid, I didn't realize that. I started to see like, oh, okay, there's things that I know about the trading card business that I can then help that agent achieve their goal. It helps us achieve our goal. It's a win-win, right? That was always kind of the spur moment that made me think of, okay, these relationships have legs, not just because these guys are celebrities on the baseball field or, basketball court, but because the access that they have and the things they're trying to achieve, I know other people that would add value to that too.
So this is before social media. So how did was Upper Deck selling to auction houses or like big time buyers? So how does that's just on the collectibles between individuals then. So is the money in signing the players and having them endorse you guys, or how does Upper Deck, I guess, other than people buying sports cards, where else is the money coming from?
Yeah, so the idea is when they autograph the cards, they put it blind into packs, right?
Right.
And then your hope is that some of those players catch fire, and so people will buy multiple packs and keep going back to the stores and
Right.
buying packs. Now that was in a time when you can go into Target and Walmart and buy the
Yeah, yeah,
packs,
yeah.
but distribution is what it was all about, right? So Upper Deck would create partnerships with a bunch of distributors. Those distributors would have certain regions, the southern region, the Midwest, the upper Northeast, whatever. They would then get it into all the hobby shops in those areas, including the big box retailers, so that if any kid wanted to go into any shop, he could find cards. So
Right.
that those were the key points. Websites were just starting out, but it wasn't the sales opportunity like it is now. And obviously, no social media at all. I mean, they would have been a totally
Yeah,
different business.
for sure. And that's
Hmm.
probably like we were talking about earlier. Another reason it's recently popped is because social
For
media just
sure,
it's so easy to see this stuff and people
no question.
touting it and look what a poll I got or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I always wonder how much those numbers are true, when they sell for a certain amount of dollars, because there's there's a there's not a whole lot of checks and balances on that. So if somebody's like, yeah, it sold for $4 million. Did it? I didn't see a check that
right.
said $4 million, but
Yeah.
even if it was, would I believe that anyways?
Sure, sure. A few years later, after Upper Deck, you transitioned over to Panini America, the other
Mhm.
big name in that space. What was the difference between those two companies?
Oh man, it was night and day, night and day. I think Upper Deck at the time, the owner of Upper Deck was a brilliant mind, not a spectacular person. And so the company was ran really, uh, out of fear. Unbelievable employees, unbelievable. I mean, people when I worked at Upper Deck, the people that have gone on from there to lead other companies, unbelievable. Like the talent pool at Upper Deck was phenomenal, but they were so scared of their jobs all the time because of the way it was run, right?
Wow.
Panini was an Italian-based company. It still is an Italian-owned company, and I think because they were across the ocean, it was a little more uh, employee friendly, I'll say, right? And so you had a lot of talented people again at Panini, and they still do, and so does Upper Deck. One of the guys I work for is currently the president of Upper Deck, and he's a phenomenal individual. So they are on the right path. He's got them going in the right places. But Panini was a totally different setup, and I think because Upper Deck had seen the behemoth of what it could be. It had rode that crest of that wave, and it was trying to figure it out on the way. As it was kind of the market was kind of changing. Panini started with a small company. They bought a company called Donruss.
Yeah.
Donruss was a smaller based kind of business based here in Dallas, where I live, and they were kind of a fighting the big dogs all the time, fighting Tops, fighting Upper Deck, fighting these companies, but just kind of doing it amongst a small group of maybe 75 employees at the time. So Panini comes in, brings in an influx of cash. Now all of a sudden you have people that are like, cool, we can actually do some stuff, not just talk about it, but actually, build some opportunities here. And that over the last, I mean, I'm trying to think of when 2009. So what's that? 12 years. Over the last 12 years, they've become just a monster. I mean, just in a monster in the sense of a major company in this space, right?
Yeah.
The biggest, I think, trading card manufacturer. Tops is obviously a beast as well. They do a phenomenal business in baseball, but Panini with their full exclusive licenses in NFL and NBA, they've just done amazing things with coming out of Italy, which didn't understand the trading card space. I'm truthfully not even sure how much they still understand the trading card space, but it doesn't matter. They've got the team that was Donruss initially that has built into what it's Panini today. The employees they have there, I mean, once again, hardworking, very intelligent, really understand the collectible space. It was amazing. When you look back on your journey, and we were talking about this before, when you look back at your journey while you're in the middle of it, you don't realize all the things you're learning. When you look back at it, you see, wow, man, there was a lot of moments there that I was privy to that just worked out, really in my favor, which was great.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you about, so for a short time you worked with a sports agency, still,
Yeah.
back to your building relationships things.
Mhm.
So what was that like with a different, I guess, industry? I mean, you're still working with, obviously with the card companies here and there for things, but what was different about that for you when you got into sports agency?
Yeah, so I joined that sports agency. I was looking for something else to do. I was kind of felt like I had, kind of hit what I wanted to do at Panini, and I felt like the next step wasn't something I was very interested in. And so I was having communication with a few different agencies. one agency is of a good friend of mine was like, hey man, we're looking for somebody to kind of handle our marketing, do our trading card deals and that type of space. I met his agency, met his partners, uh, two other guys, one guy still to, two of these guys still to this day, phenomenal friends with, absolutely adore them. They're phenomenal baseball agents and I'll recommend them all the time.
All right.
The guy that owned it, we had kind of a different, I think personality clashes, right? After a while you start to see I'm the type of person that's like, we're all in this together. And I think sometimes there's people that are like, this is my business, you work for me type stuff,
Yeah.
and I mean, it was his business. He built it. He had built a phenomenal business, with great talent, and I had no hard feelings towards it. I thought that was his choice. That was he chose to do, fortunately for me, I had the option to kind of, after a while, realize the sports agency business of what I, had hoped I was hopefully joining wasn't actually what I thought. I mean, at the end of the day, I love sports, and I loved trying to help athletes and their families understand what the business of sports really is. I think a lot of times, kids grow up and they're phenomenal, talented, and their parents are just excited because they're such good players. And then all of a sudden you get thrust into this world of the business of sports.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of people by surprise. So my thought during that, I worked there 7 months. I was all about just trying to help bridge that gap. Like I was obviously handling trading card deals, which wasn't, extremely tough. I mean, a lot of times you
Yeah,
have
that's
talented
a
guys,
small part of the job.
small
Yeah.
part, but it was more just helping that kind of, that aspect of it. And I think what was tough on me is you build these relationships with these families and these players, and then they decide to go with a different agency, and I was like, oh man, like that hurts, I,
Yeah.
I and I truly, I definitely think, there's so many factors around the agency business that decide those things. If your high school coach is friends with a guy from, college that's an agent, then those kids are going to go that way.
Yeah.
If there's a couple agencies that live in that area, those kids are probably going to go, so there was all this nuance to the business that it wasn't my deal, man. And at the end of the day, I said, you know what, that's not where I want to be. Like I said, those two friends of mine that were there are phenomenal agents. They joined a different agency and they're doing phenomenal. And they are good agents. They really care about the kids, which was what I was a big fan of. I say kids, forgive me. I mean, a lot of them are adult
Yeah,
men
sure.
now, but when you start, they're 16, 17 years old, man. And for me, that's a kid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, I think you kind of see after going through it for a little while, like, oh, okay, I didn't know if it was maybe it wasn't the right fit, or maybe it was just the agency business. But luckily after that, I found the game use side that I kind of wanted to build out more.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. So you end up in, not that you weren't in Dallas already, but you're in Texas now full time, and you've made all these connections over your career, and you kind of get the entrepreneurial spirit to start your own
Mhm.
thing called GameUsedTone. So how did you finally just start to decide on what your business was going to be?
Yeah, so it actually technically started about a year earlier. About a year earlier, I was at Panini, and I was talking with. We were doing a signing with Kevin Durant and Rich Kleiman, his partner, Rich Kleiman, and so we were talking about, just kind of. They were just asking kind of how the business works. Could we do our own trading cards? And I was like, because of licensing, you wouldn't have the rights to any of the imagery, blah blah, and stuff like that. That plays into it. And he's like, what about autograph memorabilia? And I was like, distribution's tough. You've got to start to know all these distributors, and they don't really jump on board for like one guy selling his own stuff. They like to have, multiple athletes that they're working with. So they prefer to work with like a large manufacturer like Panini or Upper Deck or whatever. So he's like, well, what can I sell? What about my jersey? And I was like, technically your jersey's owned by the teams because they got the team logo on it, and the teams provided that. And he was like, what about the shoes? And I said, well, the shoes, I guess, would be yours. I mean, as long as Nike's not asking for them back, or Adidas or whoever, as long as they're not asking for them back, technically, I guess they're yours. And so far, they haven't asked for them back. We'll see how that plays. But
Right, right.
so he was like, well, how about you do that for me? You sell my shoes. And I was like, well, it's a conflict of interest because I'm working for Panini, and their job is to, secure some of this stuff for their trading cards. So fast forward, going through the agency, and I was kind of, I kind of could see that my end was in sight at that agency. I didn't feel like that was the spot for me. And I reached out to Kevin Durant's team, him and Rich, and I said, hey, what about this idea of, me selling your shoes and this type of stuff? And at the time, timing is what it is. We were kind of starting to have the communication, the conversation about it. And Kevin Durant gets injured. He gets injured. It was when he hurt his ACL right before when they had the run with the Golden State Warriors. And so timing is what it is. Like, oh, dude, could have had this maybe potential partnership. It falls apart. But then I realized, like, I still have a lot of other contacts in the basketball world. Started reaching out, started building contacts, started building relationships again. And I had been away for about 6-8 months. And so that I pitched the idea. A lot of people weren't being approached in their game use space, just because up to that point, most players didn't realize there was any significant value. So I kind of presented this opportunity. They had to kind of take a risk on me because I didn't have millions of dollars to front them ahead of time and say, here, we'll give you, $100,000 for 5 pairs of shoes, whatever. I didn't have that ability. So I said, look, I'll be your personal expert. I'll help you to find the buyers. I'll get the buyers for you. I'll authenticate them. I'll make sure everything goes. All you have to do is submit them to me. We'll sell them. We'll get you back the money on it, and we built a partnership out that way. And so, that kind of developed my business. I mean, I've told this to Rich Kleiman many times. I'm like, really, my whole business started with your idea, truthfully. And, that's kind of how it's grown out. So, we've got about 35 plus, between 35 and 40 players we work with. And, it's gone everything from, our one of our top names is Luka Doncic we work with. We've got, 4 or 5 all-stars. We've got, 20 or so starters, and we've got another 10 or 15 rookies. The market is very similar to trading cards in the sense that a lot of people love the rookies because you don't know how they're going to play out.
Right.
So we try to work with as many first-year players as we can and just kind of follow them through their journey.
I mean, having Kevin Durant as a first client is pretty good. It's a pretty good start.
it would have been amazing. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But,
if he comes back to himself, you got a shot there.
Man, and he is one of those guys that I'm truly grateful. Him and his business partner, Rich, both of those guys really built out, just having the idea and still being a partner with me in the sense of advice, guidance. You have stuff like that. Especially, and I knew Kevin Durant was a phenomenal player at that time. I didn't know he was going to be who he is today, which, I think he's one of the best players in the NBA. You could have the argument that he is, but I don't want to take King James off his throne. But there's a lot of there. We were talking about before, unfortunately, there's only like a handful of athletes that in each sport that people really like, are globally collected, and it's unfortunate because there's, hundreds of athletes in each sport that are phenomenal. To be a professional athlete, as you know, right? It's like these guys are crazy talented. Yeah. They're just unbelievable. And so, but I do think that in the collectible space, we have to work with, this cream of the crop type players because at the end of the day, we're in a business too. We're trying to make money, and, doing everything on charity just doesn't, pay the bills in my place.
Right. And real quick, we were talking offline about, like having Hall of Famers collectibles in your house, and it's not worth anything because that's not a valuable or a high profile enough player, which is insane.
Right. It's crazy, man. It's crazy to me. I think we were talking about, guys like John Stockton and Karl Malone, and these guys that are Karl Malone, I believe is the third, maybe the second, but I think he's the third highest scorer of all time.
Yeah.
And he's not even in the, like, people aren't selling Karl Malone rookie cards for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But he's one of the greatest players ever played. It's when you think about like those numbers of scoring, when you're talking 20, 30,000 points over 20-year career.
Yeah. One of 6 or 7 guys have done that.
Yeah. And it's unbelievable. Like when you're like, he averaged like 25 points for his career. Like every game you're getting at least 25 from Karl Malone. So, but it's, that's one thing is I'm not the predictor of the market. I just read it, right?
You just have to go where the money's at.
For sure. And so obviously I would love to sell Karl Malone stuff. If he's out there, give me a call. But but I do think that it comes down to the market kind of dictates who the players are that are collectible, and that's who we try to focus on and try to work with, because we know that if the market is looking for those items and we can access them, we can find buyers for those things.
Right. And I was going to ask you about the revenue split. So you're working directly with players, right? So now you're giving them the opportunity to get a piece, which was unusual in the collectible business because it's just from trader to trader and the player gets left out. So how do you work on the revenue split between when the player gives you a pair of shoes, what are they going to get out of that sale?
Yeah, so I'm probably one of the few guys that'll tell you transparently what we do. We do 70-30 splits. 70% goes to the player. I'm a firm believer that the player is the one that added all the value to the item. Now, I am the expert. I like to think we're experts in the space of finding where those buyers are for those items and how to make those items valuable. By authenticating them, getting them photo matched. I have a partnership with the Migrate Group. To me, they are in the NBA world. They are the elite authenticator globally. I went to China a few years ago before coronavirus. I was not connected to that, but I went to China and I got to meet with a lot of collectors out there. There was a couple different shows I went to, and and a lot of those guys, English is not, they speak it well, but it's not their first language, obviously.
Right.
But all they kept talking about was migrate all the time. And I'm like, well, Panini, has the game used exclusive with such and such player. Don't care about Panini, migrate. I'm like, what about Upper Deck with LeBron? Don't care, migrate. Like, and so I realized when I left there, I was like, I got to get a partnership with Migrate.
Yeah.
Because they have once again, the market is speaking to me. It's telling me Migrate is the authentication company we want. So we built out a relationship over the last year. We've kind of continued to grow it and develop it. And we're still in our infancy of how we're working together. Anytime you're working with a partnership, there's ebbs and flows of how you do that. Everybody's got different goals, right? And so we continue to grow it out and build out this space. But the thing that's been most interesting to me is that as this market continues to grow, people are looking for more and more unique collectibles. And sometimes, an autograph will do it. Sometimes a trading card. Sometimes, some of the collectors we work with, they like game used. They like to have an actual piece of the player's items, which, goes back to, that's why we think that we can find those buyers. But I can't play the game for Kevin Durant or Luka Doncic, right?
Yeah.
So when he plays the game and he, has a great game and he's willing to allow us to sell his shoes, we found the buyers that are going to be looking for those items and pay top dollar for it, so that Luka gets what he deserves for his items.
How do you guys go about finding the buyers per se? I'm sure you have some big, sharks out there that have a lot of money, but what's the process of finding the buyers for these type of items?
Yeah, so it helped that I had those relationships at Upper Deck and Panini, and I kind of knew their memorabilia space, because I worked in their autograph memorabilia divisions as well, helping them to, find out who, people wanted specific autographs, like not just Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan with a specific inscription. And when people start to have specific, they're not just buying off the retail shelf, there's a little bit of a collector's nature to it. They kind of want certain things. So starting to build relationships with those individuals over time, didn't realize obviously that game use was going to be in my future.
Right.
But built those relationships, started to kind of get to know them and get to know what they collect. Because most collectors will have a unique thing that they collect. I'm a set collector, so I want to put all these cards together. Or I'm specifically a Kobe Bryant collector, and I love all his.
Right.
And so once you start to get through those tiers, and then you become, I'm a Kobe Bryant collector, but I only want his game used shoes when he wore the Kobe 5. Now all of a sudden you're real specific, right? And so when you start to build enough relationships with collectors, you start to see kind of what they collect. And then, a lot of guys, we don't try to take every dollar from somebody. No, our goal is to, obviously our partnership is with the player. We're trying to maximize that sale for that player. And we read the market. If somebody's shoes are selling for $500, we don't go try to sell something for $10,000.
Yeah.
We're in that space. But there are players and there are collectors who want something so bad that they've created the market at $10,000 or $100,000, or in this trading card space, millions of dollars, as you see. It's not, obviously we're trying to do the best we can for our players so we can keep that business going, and Luka keeps giving us shoes and we keep building that out. But it's the collectors that determine those pricing, And so we get to a point where we go, okay, we use social media. We find out who's sitting courtside at the games, who's going to special events with the players, who's I'd always think social media gives people so much of a window into who people are a lot of times. Now some of it's obviously made up, and
Yeah.
they don't really drive Lamborghinis or whatever, but
Sure.
but I think that collectors that I've noticed, especially people that have a lot of disposable income, they they love these collections. They love to create these collections because it's what they're about, right? So when I can show I've got 20 Kobe game used shoes, it's not because I'm trying to be boastful that I have the money to buy 20 Kobe game. It's because I love Kobe Bryant. And I'm so dedicated to him that I spend my hard-earned money creating this collection of almost an homage to Kobe, right? And I think that to me is the beautiful thing about collectors, is that when you look all the way down to the people who are buying 20-cent cards, dollar cards of their favorite players. When you look at that collector, that person is telling you like, LeBron James is my guy. Like, and when you look at just the fan base in general, a lot of people say like fans are crazy, when they're die hard, live and die by what the New York Mets do. I look at it on the opposite side. I think that's a beautiful thing that the Mets have a guy like that, or an individual like that, who's so passionate that his life revolves around how the Mets win or lose every game, what they do. Like, to me, I look at it like that's what makes people special to me, is the passion people have. Sometimes people put their passion in various creative, adventures and endeavors, but a lot of times, these people have, they're hardworking people, or they're just doing whatever they can to have these unique collections that show their passion on whatever level it is. So I dig it, man. I dig all of it, honestly.
I mean, that the word fan came from fanatic, so some of these people are a
100%.
little bit crazy.
There are, and
Yeah.
you know that more than most, man.
Yeah,
There
for
are people
sure.
that are just die hard, live and die, and I think that's who they've decided to be. That's
Yeah.
that's who they are. Which is, I mean, I dig it. I dig it.
Sure. Do you work with, like, for just a regular guy like me, I had an item. Do you work with regular average people or only with players directly?
We do. We take consignment,
Yeah.
but we have to, once again, we have to photo match everything,
Right.
and consignment gets tricky because you never know how they got that item. You know what I mean? We've had items where that they've come across our desk that weren't, the player didn't know that they got that item. But with players throwing stuff into the crowds and stuff,
Yeah.
a lot of times, I try to tell our guys this, like the players we work with. I'm like, I love the idea of you throwing stuff to the fans, but a lot of times some of those fans are opportunistic, right? They're going
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is cool. I got this moment. Well, I got a photo or a video of this moment, but this thing's worth $5,000, $10,000. Like, I definitely want the $5,000 more than I want that item." And so we do come across that a lot. If we have a good sense, and obviously it's not a perfect world, but if we have a good sense of people that are looking to sell those items that we find we can have value and add value to it. But I'll tell you, more often than not, man, I will point people in the right direction. I will
Yeah.
tell people like, "Hey, look, certain items, when you're talking elite players, LeBron, Kobe, whatever, like, we know those collectors that'll pay top dollar that most people don't know." But when you say, "Hey, I got a pair of shoes from," and forgive me because I'm not going to use a name because I don't want to put anybody in
Sure.
spaces, but a player from the league or something, and it doesn't have that huge value as we were talking about before, the uniqueness of the collectible.
Yeah.
I'll point people in the right direction. I'll say, "Hey, man, go get that thing photo matched either by my partner, Migrate, who I think once again is the best, or these other, there's other companies that do it. They all have different price points." And I'll tell them, like, you can put it up on eBay, or you can get it to an auction house like Golden Auctions or SCP or Heritage Auctions, any of these great auction companies, and you don't have to pay me my percentage on it. I'm all about, man. I think that there is enough business in this space for everybody to do well. And I do think that there are quite a few people that try to keep all that themselves and try to control all of it. And I think that, if somebody can make a $1,000 or a couple $100 because I've guided them in the right direction, it honestly makes me feel better than me going, "Hey, I'll take it and I'll go through all this and I'll sell it and you'll
Right.
make a couple $100 less.
Yeah. You mentioned Kobe. Of course, I'm a huge Kobe fan as well. I wanted to ask you, you've met him numerous times and worked with him when you're doing, trading card signings and all kinds of stuff. I know you got some stories about Kobe, so maybe one or two of those that you remember that you could tell us.
Man, I got to know Kobe over About a 12-year period. And obviously, I mean, he was he was the best person towards the end of his career. When he was playing, when I got to know him early on, I got to know his agent, Rob Pelinka, who's with the Lakers now.
Yeah.
You know, Kobe was intense. Kobe was super intense. He was not cordial. He was not friendly. He was very focused. Like, okay, we're here to do this signing. We're gonna knock this out. Like, you know, not conversational, just very to the point. And I just thought, you deal with so many different guys and elite level athletes. You just go, maybe they don't like me. Maybe they're just not feeling it today. Whatever.
Yeah.
And he kind of went through that. So the first few times signings with Kobe, it was pretty serious. And I was just like, he's not a friendly guy. It's just not who he is. Then over the years, as he was getting closer and closer to retirement, you started to see his personality come out, and you started to see his level of intelligence come out. I tell you that I think Kobe is probably one of the sharpest athletes I've ever met. Kobe's business mind. Kobe was like creative to the sense of like he would think like 5, 10 years ahead. And that's not me at all. So that always blew me away, right? I'm the guy that's like, what's tomorrow, not 10 years.
Yeah.
And Kobe would always be like, he would start talking about like his ideas. Oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I'd be like, why? Like, you got money, you got like relax, enjoy. But that wasn't his personality. His personality was like, he's a doer. Kobe was always doing stuff. And so towards the end of his career, we had some great stories. I remember one time we're doing a signing. He's very particular about how he does stuff. So his signing was, he would hold his hand like this. And my job was to get the card right here. So he could put his hand down, sign, lift it up, put his hand down, sign. He was like particular because he was like all about efficiency. And at first I'm like, dude, like just grab the cards and sign them. Yeah. No, but he was all about efficiency. He was like, if we do this, it's going to get through faster. You're going to get more signatures. He was helping me out. I thought he was just being a turd, but he flown up, man. He was super fast and efficient. We got through so many cards. It's like, this guy he's just next level. So we're doing this signing, and his phone rings, and he's like, you mind if I get this? I was like, of course, it's your world, man. I'm just here. Right.
Yeah.
And so he picks up the phone, and the dude speaking in, and forgive me, because I didn't know at the time if it was Mandarin or Cantonese, but it was an Asian language for sure. And Kobe starts talking back to this guy, and like full on conversating. Now, I don't know if it was, the basic, Spanish that I know, like the 3 or 4 sentences, but he had a 10-minute conversation with this guy in full Cantonese or Mandarin. And I was like, so I look up later and I'm like, Kobe knows like 6 or 7 languages. Like he grew up in Italy, obviously he knew Spanish and Italian and English and a lot of these different things, but French. But then he knew Cantonese and Mandarin. I was like, this guy's next level, man. He was crazy. So that's one of my favorite ones. I'll tell you another story I love about Kobe that just, it was just his insight. We were talking about Donald Trump, and it was prior to Donald Trump being even running for president. It was like kind of, where it was almost like a Saturday Night Live sketch that Donald Trump was going to be a presidential candidate, whatever, way before he actually ran. And Kobe, we were doing a signing, and Kobe's like, if he runs, that's your next president. And at the time, man, and I'm not a political person, so I'm not taking any stance on it.
Right.
I just thought, I was like, no chance. That guy's a TV business clown. Like, that's not, that's not going to happen. And he was like, he is. And he goes, he is a polarizing guy. He goes, if he gets 51% of the people to like him, more than 51% of the people not liking him, he's your president. And I was like, no chance. So sure enough, fast forward, we're doing signings, and he's kind of keeping me updated, Trump's going well, Trump, blah, blah. And then sure enough, Trump becomes president, right? And we do a signing afterwards. And as soon as he walks in the door, he's like, who told you? Who told you? And I was like, it was you, man. And then you find out, he obviously he was close with Ivanka, and so he knew kind of that was a real serious conversation that was possible. He also knew Donald, I guess, to some extent. I don't know the extent of it, but he kind of he saw, and like I said, man, he was one of those guys that really saw how things happen. And he knew, and I think he really knew, and this is what I think looking back at it now, is I think that he realized Kobe was a polarizing guy. Kobe was a guy that people either loved or they absolutely hated. And because he was, like I said early on, he was so intense that when you got to talk to him, I didn't like him early on. And I think he was so focused on being the best and winning championships and all these things. That's what his mind was. His mind wasn't like, hey, I care if you like me. I care to keep achieving what I'm achieving. And so I do. I think that he kind of had that same, Trump thought where, like he was polarizing. And man, honestly, the day he passed, I didn't believe it. I thought, obviously like everybody else, man, I had people calling me from all over talking about, do you think this is real? All this stuff. Man, it was a surreal day because I was like, I didn't go to his kids' birthday parties. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't ever gonna, I mean, he may have saw me and been like, "Hey, Tone, what's up?" But he was never like, "Dude, let's go grab dinner, let's hang
Yeah.
out, blah blah blah." But but I felt like I was a piece of his life for a moment, right? Because when we would do signings, it was just me and him, man. And for 2 or 3 hours, whatever it was, whenever we would do these signings, it was just me and him. In a small moment in life, I was the only face he was looking at, right? So I thought like there, I had a connection with him that I'm a big believer in. We'll see him again someday, and I'm so grateful for all the things he did post career. I think he's, I argue that he's the second best player to ever play the game. And once again, I don't want to take the throne off of King James, but
I'm good with it.
I believe it's Jordan. I believe it's Kobe. I believe it's LeBron. And,
Yep.
and truthfully, I think it's because of how they changed the game, right? And I think that Kobe was a 10 times better person, 10 times more impactful after his career than he was on the court.
Yeah.
That's my thought on him.
I agree with you there. Those are some awesome stories. Thank you for sharing
Thank
those. And speaking of a forward-thinking guy like him, let's get to what's happening now. That's very forward-thinking is NBA Top Shot. So for my listeners that don't know, it's basically buying digital sports cards, digital highlights, and being able to own those moments. Some people can't get their heads around it yet, but hey, I mean, nobody really understood Bitcoin 10 years ago, and now look at it. So I'm trying to be more open-minded to it. I have an account on Top Shot, and I got a couple moments, but how do you see this going compared to sports cards? And is this maybe sustainable, or we should just all accept that it's the future of owning sports memorabilia digitally?
So, I mean, a couple things my experience on it is trading cards for a long time have tried to figure out how to maximize and monetize the digital space. Trading cards were trying to get this concept kind of built into cards, so it still had a physical space, but having like digital games in like a thin card. And so they've been trying to work through this process for years. Upper Deck did it early on, but it just never worked right, and the batteries were a problem and all this stuff. Panini did it again down the road, and so has Topps, but they've never really found the formula. So to me, I don't think the NBA Top Shot idea is so crazy, right? I think that it's something that everybody realizes when you started taking, from when I was a kid and you had a cassette to then a CD to then an iPod, that you had all of your music with you all the time. That's how I see this progression. I see that people like to show things that they have. It's hard to show things when it's at your house, but you're showing an image. It doesn't give it full effect. So I think that when you have the app and you can then go look at your clip that you have ownership of, and it's numbered to 500 or 15,000 or whatever the numbers are on the variations, I see that it has legs. And anytime you get a lot of attention to something, and there's people saying they're paying the players to kind of hype about this, and they're all part of the deal and whatever. Perhaps. But if there's money going through there, your players are going to be involved in it because it's, once again, they're adding the value. It was LeBron James who made that play that people are buying, right?
Right.
Trey Young or whoever the players are. And so I think that it's definitely got legs. Now I do think that since it's the first in kind of that category, I think once NFL, MLB, all of these kind of big properties, sports properties, do something similar, I think that those numbers will start to kind of level out. I do think that a one-of-one clip, even if it's a clip you can go get on YouTube,
Right.
having ownership to the one-of-one of that clip is going to have value. The number to 5 is going to have value. I think that the most amazing things about sports are the highlights. When you look at the moments, when you see, obviously basketball is kind of the key passion point for me, but when you see a player do some amazing thing that you hadn't seen before, you'll watch that clip 20 times.
Yeah.
So what makes it collectible from watching it 20 times to then owning that clip? Where's that transition when somebody can say, hey, that's my clip. I have the unique one-of-one gold edition of that play. I do. I think that across the history of sports, there's been so many moments, and I could talk about iconic moments.
Sure.
The Kirk Gibson, if you're in LA, man, Kirk Gibson's
Right.
home run
And
to
yeah.
when you talk about when they open up, and this is where I think the progression goes, right? Is they have the rights to the NBA Players Association right now, so they can do current players. When they build out with the Retired Players Association and the Hall of Fames, and all of a sudden you start getting moments of when Will Chamberlain scored 100, or when Babe Ruth calls his shot, if that ever actually happened, whatever. I'm not here. I'm not saying,
Or like
but
the Jordan against Utah,
the Jordan
that
game
moment,
winner,
right? Or a Tiger
dude,
Woods shot, or
Tiger, everything. When you're talking about those iconic moments, what are those going to go for?
right.
And I personally, I don't know the guys at Dapper Labs that are doing NBA Top Shot, but what I do know of them is they're super intelligent individuals. So I know that this isn't like they're going to go, oh, that's a great idea. They're thinking that way out. And I think what they're doing is I think they're building the madness around what they currently have, knowing that they have this gold in their back pocket just waiting. Once they build up that level where people, because right now you can't buy a pack. It's really hard to buy a pack.
It is,
You,
yeah.
you log in and you're in line and they're like, yeah, sorry, we sold out the first 10, whatever.
And a lot of the stuff in those packs is garbage, honestly.
A
Like I
lot of
don't
it.
need
But it's the
yeah.
same thing with trading cards, though, man.
Right.
The same thing
Right.
with trading cards.
It
You
is.
buy a pack of cards, you buy a box of cards, and you're waiting for one or two cards. You know what I mean? Like all that other stuff, which is once again we were talking about.
Yeah.
All phenomenal NBA players or MLB or any sport athletes,
Yeah.
whatever your product you're buying, all phenomenal players, but
Yeah.
there's one or two that make the difference in that box. Same thing.
Sure. And I was going to ask you, do you think the digital art and digital moments and all that stuff is going to affect your business at all? Or do you think there's always going to be a market for physical, game-worn apparel and shoes and all that stuff?
Man, I think that the thing I love most about my business is that every single one of my items is a one of one, right? So like, you can never have that same pair of shoes from that same game. There'll
Yeah,
never be another one,
that's
right?
true.
So I love that aspect of it. I do think that there's some rendition of a digital connection. And I've had guys hit me up and ask me about, hey man, what do you think about we create an NFT with, an artistic rendering of your shoe and then you sell it with that? And the cool thing about NFTs, which I love, and I wish I could figure out a way to do it with my business, is that as they sell, a percentage goes back to the original owner. So every time it sells, I think it's 10%. It may be very different by different platforms. But if you're telling me that I could sell an item and every time I sell it, 2% goes to me and 8% goes back to the original player, that changes my business, right? Because now all of a sudden, because our items occasionally change hands. It doesn't happen as often as trading cards and stuff. But if I could create something like that, the problem is that I'm trying to take a physical thing into a digital space, and then the actual thing that's being sold technically that's changing hands is the artist rendering of the shoe or the jersey or whatever, and then you're hoping that the person then forwards the jersey or the actual shoe. So it becomes complicated. I hope that there's some way to figure it out in the future, but I definitely think there's a partnership there somewhere down the road.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you about as far as players you've worked with outside of, let's just say, Kobe and and Kevin Durant, who's maybe been one of your favorite players to work with or favorite stories you have from a signing or anything like that?
Oh man, there's a lot. I've met so many players that are better people than players. Like, guys that you're just like, oh man, I could hang out with that guy anytime. Spectacular. One of my favorites, and he happens to be one of the biggest names, one of my favorites was Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, pre all this, stuff
Right.
that happened
Scandal.
and his,
Yeah.
all that stuff, that happened, which, I could argue that fact many times, but I do. He was one of the people that was the most fun to be around. Like he had great stories. He was like your buddy that you've known for 30 years. Like he was just awesome, absolutely awesome. And I got to hang out with him, man. Or do signings with him for maybe 10 times. And it got to a point where like I was so looking forward to sitting down with Tiger Woods because he was just he just the way he saw the world, the way he and just totally different from anything I was a part of, right? I mean, obviously, this guy was a professional athlete at 5 years old. You know what I mean? Like he obviously wasn't on the tour, but he's in the mindset. Yeah. He was in the mind state of a professional athlete at that age where like practice all the time, like, you're regimented in your diet, you're regimented on how you do your stuff. Like, I think that most people, it takes into your later teens to realize like, oh, you really have to dedicate to this to get to that next level because your talent only takes you so far. This guy was in that mindset as a young kid. And I think because of that, when he got to be around guys his age, and there was no reporters and there was nobody, obviously we had a legal obligation. We couldn't talk about anything that happened at that time. We couldn't go to TMZ or whoever was at that time. It wasn't TMZ at the time, but
Yeah.
that he felt free, and he would be so, he was awesome. He was absolutely awesome. I remember him telling us stories about, he had this Toyota Supra in high school. It was a white Toyota Supra. I remember this vividly. And he had it when he went to Stanford, and he was like almost crying, wondering where that car is at today. Like he loved that car so much. Obviously he got to a point in his life where he could have 1,000 Toyota Supras,
Right.
but he wanted that specific one because of all the memories he had in it, going to different places, hanging out with buddies or whatever. But when you start to see like people, because I think, when you hang around with athletes and celebrities and you're around that scene occasionally, and forgive me because I'm such a small piece of that, but when you're in that scene, you see that like when people say, "Oh, they're all regular people," you're like, "Yeah, yeah, but they're rich and they're famous and they can't go out to eat and they have all these elements that, you know, some people would say are amazing and makes their life so much better." And sometimes you get to see those individuals and it doesn't. It makes their life tougher. When they get unlimited money, they have a lot more people asking them for it. When they get unlimited fame, they can't do anything. They can't pick their nose in public because people are watching them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you start talking about like that they can't go out to eat, like you go out to eat with your buddies and don't think about it. They go out to eat and they're constantly harassed. I'm sorry to bother you. Can I get an autograph? Can I get a photo? Can I get whatever? Right. And so it almost changes their world. And I truthfully don't think anybody, even the leagues, are teaching these guys how to deal with this, right? And so they have to kind of figure it out themselves. So you start to see like these 4 or 5 in each sport that are these iconic individuals will start to connect with each other because they're like, you're going through what I'm going through. What can we do? And so I think that when you can get past that sometimes, and it's happened to me on occasion, where you can get past that window and they can just be them. And Tiger Woods allowed us that faster than most people will. Usually, I've got to know quite a few players, but usually it takes quite a while for them to open up and you start to see moments of them. But Tiger Woods was kind of like, I don't know, maybe he's just really great at reading the room and realizing that like I was just, I was glad to be there, but at the same point, like I just wanted to do my job and have a good time and you call it a day. And I mean, he's still to this day one of my favorites.
That's pretty cool because you think of him kind of like a Kobe, a little standoffish, a little
For
bit,
sure.
don't bother me. I'm really
Mhm.
intense. I don't want to do this, but that's cool to hear that about him, about both of those guys. Actually, it's pretty crazy because on the outside, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like that. So
No, no, no. And I do, man. I think that they have to be super protective.
yeah,
I think they're, especially now. I think that, I know that the older players, the older retired players are like, oh, these guys make so much money. But I don't think they realize all the additional stuff they deal with.
yeah,
When you're talking about social media was a game changer for athletes and celebrities, entertainers, artists,
sure,
anybody of any famous nature. That was a game changer for him because now all of a sudden, and then also to forgive me, the phones. When your phone had the ability to take a photo, that changed everything too, right? And
yes,
so those elements played into athletes' lives. And I think now as a player going through that space, they understand it, right? When you got a guy like Zion Williamson, who's been followed since he was 15, he has a better. It was hard at 15, but at 20, he has a much better understanding of it. When you're talking about players 10 years ago who had played their whole, a big portion of their career without it, and then all of a sudden we're thrown into the middle of it, they're like, whoa, what is this all about? And I do, man. I know that the leagues try their best to try and educate these athletes in various areas, including finances and obviously, uh, women
shady
or men or
people,
shady
yeah,
people around them, whatever those situations. But that's an area that I think they continue to try to develop and explain to guys. And the other thing is too, I mean, when you're coming into the league in the NFL and you're 20, 21, 22, or the NBA, you're 19, 20, how much you really listen to the guys that are telling you that,
yeah,
you're going like, whatever, man, you don't
yeah,
know my life. So
yeah.
I think it's a tricky world that those guys are in. And I do believe that they are these athletes, and I speak specifically to athletes. These athletes are are dealing with a lot more than we give them credit for on a daily basis.
No, well, they're lucky to have someone like you in their corner as well, selling their stuff.
One small piece, man.
Yeah. I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of plug your website and whether people can reach out to you if they want to sell something, if they want to talk to you about something, about an item they have or whatever. How do they find you and follow you?
Yeah, no, I truly appreciate that, Brett. It is our business is GameUsedTone. It's GameUsedTone.com is our website. We're on social. We do Instagram. I have Facebook, and then also WeChat. We do a lot of WeChat in China, in kind of the overseas areas. But yeah, no, we are looking to help all the time. So even like we mentioned before, if it's somebody I can just guide in the right direction, or if it's something where I think that our expertise can add value to, we're always looking for people to reach out. I mean, people have so many amazing collections. And a lot of our collectors will connect, collecting between them because somebody's looking for a specific piece and somebody else we know has it, and we help them work out those deals. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, I'm hoping the game use space continues to grow and develop as it has to this point. We're hoping to eventually grow it out to other sports as well. We just happen to have kind of the foothold in basketball, so we started in that space.
Yeah, man, I think you're on your way. So thank you very much, Tone. It's great to have you on, man. It was an awesome episode, and look forward to definitely talking to you in the future. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the time so much, Brett. Thank you very much. And anything I can do to help, please let me know.
All right, sounds good. My thanks to Tone Steaks with GameUsedTone. Please go check it out. He's got great memorabilia on there, jerseys, game-worn, shoes. He's got all kinds of stuff, and he works directly with NBA players. So if you want to talk to him about an item you might have or a collectible, auction, please talk to him. Hit me up, and I can direct you to him if you can't reach him. But he's very accessible, great guy. So happy to have Tone on. I think it was a really cool episode. As always, you can follow the show at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. If you're on Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. Please send me a message or DM there if you want to get in touch with me, or you can email the show, tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. I'll respond there as soon as I can. And if you want to watch the show, you can follow us on YouTube at our YouTube channel, Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can find us there. Please subscribe. We need more subscribers. Please share with a friend if you're enjoying our show, which if you're still here, I think you definitely are. So we would appreciate more exposure, and send it to somebody that might like it if they're into sports or any business conversations or just to hear a good conversation. So anyways, please check us out on Apple Podcasts as well. You can find me there, Too Tall Sports Podcast. Scroll all the way down where you can. Find those stars, hit the 5-star. That'd be awesome. And leave a review if you would as well. It helps boost the exposure for the show. We're on Spotify. You can follow us there. Pandora, Amazon Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, all these freaking places. But anyway, so thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week for another great episode. Have a good day.